Hey, everyone. Welcome to another episode of At the Table. It's Jackie King. And as always, I'm so thankful that you're choosing some time to come to the table and listen to the stories of women that are using their gifts and impacting the world for the glory of God. And so today I get to invite on a friend that I have so many kindred passions and just a lot of similarities, I think. And so Kat Armstrong, welcome to At the Table today.
Jackie, I could not wait to spend time with you. I'm glad we worked it out. I was thinking about the first time we met at a Starbucks over by my house in Richardson,
Yes.
and just how I was like enamored with your passion for Jesus and the word. So this is so special. Thank you.
Oh, that's so sweet. Yes, it's been a little bit, and especially since I've moved away from Texas. So you're always a sweet little taste of home. I love getting to just watch all that God is continuing to do in you. And I get to share that a little bit today in today's episode. So why don't you tell us a little bit about where you're from, just your family, all of those kind of fun, get to know you questions.
Yeah, I'm from H-Town. I'm from Houston, very proud Houstonian. And I moved to Dallas in 2003 when I graduated from Texas A&M, and we've lived here ever since. So Dallas feels more like home, and I'm here in my house, in my home office with my husband, Aaron Armstrong. He's the lead pastor at Dallas Bible Church. It's such a joy to be married to him. We've been married 20 years this year. And we have one kiddo named Caleb Armstrong. He's 9. And Jackie, he is the kindest, most generous person on the planet. He did not get it from us. It's like he's an alien in our family. He's teaching us about kindness and generosity, but really thoughtful young man, and just got baptized on Sunday. So we're like riding high on these milestone moments in his life. And then my mom lives with us, and she is like a bonus, added extra blessing to our lives. My father passed away tragically, death by suicide 5 years ago. And one of the redemptive things that came out of that was my mom moving in with us. And I needed her in that season, didn't know that I would. But I really needed my mom during a global pandemic and some hardships at church. And it has just been a real unique joy to have her here. So I spend most of my time as a Bible teacher and author. I've got a couple books and a bunch of Bible studies. And I also have a tent making job. I'm the director of leadership processes for Integris Leadership, and we do coaching for ministry leaders. So it's a little bit about me.
So many things. And there's so many of the things that you're leaving out, but definitely a multifaceted leader, lots of different passions and lots of different ways that you have just said yes to the Lord and walked through open doors and allowed him to use you. So I'm really excited just to pick your brain on so many different things. Like literally this could probably be 4 episodes, but let's just kind of get the basic underway. So why don't we talk a little bit about just what your leadership journey started like? So when you went to A&M and then y'all moved to Dallas. So tell me a little bit about, like, did you always think that you were going to be in ministry? Did you always consider yourself a leader? Like, what did those early years for Kat Armstrong look like?
No and no. I thought that I would be a really good cheerleader like I was in high school, and I would continue to cheer people on in like life, in whatever I was doing, maybe in a coaching position, or I had all sorts of ideas, but I was mentored by my friend Carrie for 3 years at Texas A&M. And Jackie, she taught me how to pray. She taught me how to read the Bible. And we joke now because we're still friends. I thought she had some deep curriculum that she was following and being so intentional about it. And she was like, Kat, I would take some of the sermon notes from Sunday and just bring them to our coffee and we would talk about them. And I'm like, Carrie, to me, it felt like you were a Bible scholar that knew everything. And so when she would say, I want to teach you how some of the ways that I pray, I want to teach you how to journal, or I want to teach you how to do a character study, Jackie, I was glued. And so for 3 years, she mentored me. She was the chaplain in our sorority. And when she finished her term, she said, I want you to do me a favor. I want you to run as an officer in the Christian sorority. And her role as chaplain was to teach a Bible lesson every Monday night to the chapter. And at the time, there were 400 women in this group. Wow. So I remember telling her immediately, no, absolutely not. That sounds horrible and terrifying. I would never want to do that. And she said, I just want you to run out of a favor for me, because 3 years together, don't forget all that investment I've made. And the long story short, Jackie, is that I made it into that position, was teaching every Monday night through the book of Ephesians. Thank you, Jesus, it wasn't recorded. I wonder if it was like heretical. Who knows what I was saying? You're like,
we all have
Lord, Spirit, protect people from remembering things I said that were wrong. But for me, it opened up a whole new world of, when you put a Bible message together, you get to learn the most, because there's so much you don't get to share that you're like, how do I even articulate what the Spirit of God did in my heart in this week when I was in Ephesians chapter 1, but I think that exercise of preparing and then delivering set me up for a future as a Bible teacher. And honestly, Jackie, I do all sorts of different things in life, but that one thing hasn't changed, whether it's I'm teaching Sunday school for the 4th and 5th graders at my church right now, or I'm teaching a large group of women, or teaching at Right Now Media Church Conference. No matter what it is, it's kind of the same thing. I'm doing some of the principles Carrie taught me how to do when I study the scriptures, and then I get to share it with other people.
Yeah. Okay. So Carrie really was a peer. I mean, she wasn't like an older woman. She was in your sorority, probably just a couple years older and ahead of you. And so I love that picture of even just a couple years back, and she's looking back and trying to foster and develop some of those leadership potential and gifts in you. And then how scaredly you said, yes, like I want to be able to walk through those open doors. So I think whenever you kind of got on my radar, I brought you into our church and you were teaching, I think we were doing Hosea, not an easy book, right?
It was hard. It was hard.
But I think that before that, and what had kind of put you on my radar was your co-founding of Polished. So can you share a little bit about what that was? And I really think that was a big part of, you've always had this gift of Bible teaching, right? And opening up the scripture and investing in women. But you got to do that kind of early on in the marketplace within women in business. So tell me a little bit about that startup. And more specifically, I think I would love to hear how that part of your ministry helped develop and maybe even strengthen some of those other elements of leadership that you hadn't necessarily stepped into because it wasn't Bible teaching, although I know they were related.
Jackie, such a good question. So the Polish Network is coming up on its 15th year next year. We're celebrating God's faithfulness, that he has sustained the work that we're doing. And we exist to embolden working women in their faith and in their work. And all of this started when I was a student at Dallas Seminary for several years, but I was doing really well in my tent making job. I was enjoying it, meaning I was seeing success, but also it lit a fire in me that this is really fun. Business is fun. Entrepreneurship is fun. Maybe I'm not going to be a Bible teacher. Maybe I'm going to work in corporate America. And I started to get excited about how God could use a seminary education in a corporate setting. And I started meeting with an accountability partner named Stephanie, and she's the one who had the idea for the Polish Network. She too was working full-time and going to seminary part-time. And we both felt as though when we're at church, most of the women around us were talking about motherhood and about parenthood, which are things that I love. I love being a mom and I love being married to Aaron. However, there wasn't really a space that was just devoted to me talking about work. And I had a lot to talk about because I was there like over 40 hours every week.
Right.
And I was trying to figure out how to honor God with my gifts and talents and how to bring the gospel in work settings and do it the right way. And all of that to say, Jackie, we founded the Polish Network so that other working women can meet each other and we can have a place to invite our friends who may not know Christ yet. And so we started with less than 20 women in a room. And, about 10 years later, we had chapters across the state of Texas. We were moving into Oklahoma. We felt like we were moving towards more of a national presence. We had a podcast and we had hundreds and hundreds of events under our belt. Mm-hmm. And, when I talk about the Polish Network and leadership, specifically in my role, I could better serve you talking about all of my failures and all the things I wish I could go back and change than maybe all the things that I did right or the way that God used me. I think in spite of me, Jackie, God sustained the Polish Network. And now I have the privilege of encouraging other leaders to say, don't do it this way, because I did it that way and it didn't work. Mm-hmm. And so I got a lot of experience leading organizations and starting meetings and starting chapters and launching things. And it's really helped me understand some of the women I write for. I write for a lot of the women who go to the Polish Network, and I think about them when I wake up, when I go to bed at night, almost every day.
Yeah. I love that you bring out that element of failure. I think as leaders, and even more so, I don't know, maybe you feel this, maybe not, but I think even personally, because of being a woman in leadership, I feel like sometimes I put this extra weight on me because I'm a woman that we have to, kind of perform top level all the time. Like there is no margin of error. There is no opportunity to mess this thing up. And so I think sometimes we can even approach our leadership journey and even like the task that God has given us. And we've got this weight of feeling like we've got to do it perfectly and we have to know all the things. And so I appreciate you even kind of vulnerably sharing, like, there's a lot of things I do wrong and we both still do wrong, right? Like there is no perfect leader. So as you kind of think back on maybe some of those growth areas, right? Like those things that you did do wrong, is there something that maybe sticks out that would maybe even be an encouragement for us as we listen? Because that's even kind of the point of our failure, right? Like that, yes, we're going to have them, but hopefully we learn from them. And then we turn around and we help other leaders to not make the same mistake.
The mistake I made more than once and had really impacted our ministry was to ask for help too late in the process. Mm-hmm. So it's interesting you mentioned the pressure that female leaders have, that if we only make exceptions for the exceptional, we must always be excellent. We must always be on. We must always have the answer. If women feel like they're in an uphill battle to maintain their position or grow their ministry, whatever it is, yes, we have these internal and external pressures that we don't just represent ourselves in the ministries we work, we represent all women, so it is great pressure. And I think I felt that. I think I coped with pride as opposed to humility and saying, there are so many more smart people around me. They know the answers. All I have to do is pick up the phone and call one of my board of directors and say, what would you do about this? But I think I learned that I would try to manage an issue, a problem, a hardship on my own, get to a board meeting and then say, you will not believe what's been going on. And the board members, I think, would tell you over the years, there were different iterations of the board would say, Kat, why didn't you call us? Mm-hmm. I thought this is my role as executive director. Handle it, take care of it, grow it, fix it, solve it. And, I think I learned later, I needed their help more than I could have ever imagined. I had what I needed. And that's a Psalm that I rehearse almost every day. Psalm 21:3 in the version I read says, I have what I need. I have what I need. And I think, Jackie, I felt like I always had to have it within myself. And God provided all these amazing people I could have leaned on more. I did it more and more at the end of my position as executive director. And now I'm watching the new executive directors. They do it better than I did. And I'm like, that's it. That is it. That's it. They are more collaborative. They link arms with more people. They partner faster. And I learned those lessons late.
Yeah. Yeah. I think we've all been there, right? And I think even just being able to peel back the layer a little bit and be like, it is good to have people around you, even going back to something as simple as it is not good for a man to be alone. Right. And so many times we're talking about male and female relationships in that, but so much of the Trinity and the reflection in that is that there is strength in togetherness. There's strength in being able to bring other people alongside of us. And I don't know where we pick up that lie. I don't know if it's more self-imposed or we just feel like that's what a good leader is supposed to do and be, is to the catch-all and do all and be all. But I know even within my own leadership journey, it feels so much better to do this with people and to do this linked in arms together, which you say earlier that you were a cheerleader and thought that you would continue to keep cheering them on. But I think that's something that I see in you so often is that you are so willing to link arms with other people and to cheer them on and to be able to share some of the wisdom and failures and successes that you've had. And so I appreciate you sharing that so much. So tell me a little bit about, goodness, you've been busy. I mean, we're speaking, you are writing curriculum. Tell me about your new project that you've been working on that is so beautiful. If you will be able to kind of access some of the images and the links to be able to purchase Kat's new project. But I mean, the first time that I saw you post about it, I'm like, goodness, that's gorgeous. And I love what you're doing with it. So tell us a little bit about your new project.
Yeah, the covers are absolutely stunning. Nav Press and Tyndale outdid themselves. They have been an incredible publishing partner. I cannot talk about the storyline series and how passionate I am without saying it has been a group effort. And so some of the lessons I learned the hard way in the Polish Network, I've really taken to heart. And I had a whole team of people that have been incredible. So it's called the Storyline Project, Jackie. And the Storyline Project is going to help, I pray, help people put their faith back together. I think a lot of us feel like our faith is a little fragmented. We kind of picked up some theology along the way, different places. Now we're trying to like put it together. I think for others of us, they're reforming, reshaping what they believe, going back to the scriptures and their foundation of Jesus and trying to re-inform maybe some bad things that they've thought in the past and reshape that. I also think that there are some people who are deconstructing and not in the like godless way, but rather let's rebuild my faith to be anchored in Jesus with him as my foundation. How do I do that? And that storyline series is for someone like that who needs to be encouraged in their faith and look at the scriptures again. But I believe, Jackie, that the Bible is a literary masterpiece. I mean, I think God in his artistic brilliance has put together the most incredible stories, and the way that they're all cohesive and unified blows my mind that he could coordinate thousands of years of writings and multiple authors to tell one beautiful story about his love for us. And so I'm praying that people will utilize the Storyline Project Bible studies in their small groups, church groups. It's really designed to support local church efforts. But I wrote 6 Bible studies this year for the series. So it was
so much.
Yeah. I mean, when I went and did the math, I'm like, that's 600 pages. That's 160,000 words. Like, I don't know how. And it was just the Spirit. And I think part of it, Jackie, was joy. You know, you can probably see that in me. It just has been so fun. So I was in Broken Bow, Oklahoma with my family 2 years ago. Almost exactly. And I was reading this book, The Sermon on the Mount and Human Flourishing by Dr. Pennington for the second time. It's so good.
Yes.
And it's so good. And I get to page 138 and he just makes this casual remark about how many mountains are in Matthew. He's like, Jesus is tempted on a mountain. Jesus preaches his most famous sermon on a mountain. Jesus is transfigured on a mountain, and Jesus commissions his disciples on a mountain. And Jackie, I was like, what? This is so interesting. I'm going to look up every mountain in the Bible from beginning to end. And I did. And I am more excited now about mountains in the Bible than I was 2 years ago, which is ridiculous. I have read monographs. I have read it's been so fun to see that in the same way, these geographical places in the narratives are real places where historical things happened, are also metaphorically high points of our faith. And you and I have had high points in our faith where we feel so connected to God and he reveals so much of himself to us. So mountains, led to valleys. I couldn't study mountains high without valleys low. So then that led to my mind being blown at how God had organized so many faith tests happen in valleys. So when Caleb and Joshua scout the promised land and find the giants, they're in a valley. When Deborah and Jael defeat the enemy, they're in a valley. Mm-hmm. And when the psalmist talks about the valley of shadow of death, when Ezekiel talks about the valley of dry bones, and then we see valley imagery in the New Testament as being almost like Sheol or the grave or Hades. I mean, it just is really intense that these are places where our faith is tested. And I found Jesus in every single one of those valleys, and it changed me. And then it turned into trees. I was like, there are trees everywhere. There are two major trees in the garden, and, Noah made the boat out of trees, and Moses had the burning bush, and, Isaiah is full of tree imagery. And by the time you get to the New Testament, Peter tells us Jesus hung on a tree. And then there's the tree of life in Revelation. And I was like, done. This is insane. God is amazing. This has to be real. And I wasn't doubting my faith, but I tell you, Jackie, the storyline series has bolstered my faith. I'm like, there's no possible way the most brilliant storyteller could unify this. This has to be God. And so I just finished, the last two are called Sinners and Saints. And I look at character types. And really all my ideas come from my son, Caleb. He's really given me all of these ideas. But he came to me and said, hey, is Anakin Skywalker a good guy or a bad guy? And I'm like, that's a really good question. He's a tragic hero type in literature. And there are a lot of people like that. Boromir from Lord of the Rings. And then I was like, you even have Peter from the New Testament that's, makes some doofus moves, loves Jesus, and does some amazing things in the early church. So I got to talk to him about how layered and nuanced New Testament characters are and how close we are to like vilifying them or giving them sainthood when really they're people. And God used them, and some of them have tragic stories. And so as you can tell, this is like, once you get me going, it's hard to get me to stop because it's been so good. It's just been so good, Jackie. And I think that my prayer every day is that the same excitement and interest I have because of my curiosity, it's like I'm on these rabbit trails that never end and they lead to new ones. And then I'm like, what? The stones in scripture, holy cow. So I think that that's my prayer, that someone would use these in their churches, because I love studying the story of redemption through chapter, verse, person, book. I love it. This is definitely a different way to look at imagery in the Bible and let it guide you through multiple stories to see how they're connected.
Yeah. Well, and it makes me think back to sitting in systematic theology in Bible college at Criswell. And I think you're right. I think so many of us, we have maybe grown up in church or we've been in church in a certain amount of time. And like we have these stories that we know, right? We know about Jonah, we know about Peter and Zacchaeus, but we approach them so fragmented. And so like, well, this is their story, and like not ever seeing them together. And so it wasn't until I was sitting in that systematic class that I finally like started to see that meta-narrative of Scripture. And it's when that arc really started coming together and where the Old Testament and the New Testament were pitted against one another, but that it was a continuation of God's love and grace and pursuit of us, that it really does light this fire. And so as you're speaking, I'm getting more and more excited because there is just so much that connects and that it opens up. And as you deepen your knowledge in the Bible, which is ultimately deepening your knowledge and understanding of who God is and how he speaks and how he works and how such an ancient text is literally like applied today in the midst of our heartache and in the midst of our joys and hopes and dreams. It literally all comes together. And so I love seeing that in women, that they're able to see how it all like really does culminate together into this beautiful story. And so I am excited to get my hands on it. I'm excited to get my hands on the artwork that comes with it. And I mean, it is such a beautiful project. And so I hope that you, if you're listening, will go and check it out. And maybe this is going to be a great way for you to be able to take this to your discipleship group or take this to your women's Bible study and start that journey of really putting the pieces together, of being able to see the story as a whole and not these flannel board, isolated events, but that they do really come together so beautifully, not only in their stories, but in our stories as well. As we kind of start to wrap up, goodness, this is going so fast. Okay, why don't we kind of shift a little bit? Because I think there's no doubt that you are a high capacity leader. I mean, you've got so many projects, so many opportunities that God has opened for you that you have said yes to. And in the midst of failures and successes, like he's been able to work and move and grow you as his daughter, but then also use you in really cool ways. And specifically you encouraging and helping train and build up other women leaders. So, it's been a hard season, right? Like anytime that I'm having conversations, and I know you and I have even had this conversation of just how much of a toll these last few years have had on leaders all over the place, right? So I'd really love to hear just what you're seeing, maybe what you've experienced, and really kind of end on this note of, all right, leaders, like we're all together. Some of us, most of us probably are coming out pretty wounded and pretty weary and tired. What are some of the things that you're kind of leaning in and coaching and encouraging other women leaders in this season as we're trying to kind of come out of such a difficult season?
Mm-hmm. I think we are so depleted. And I think I love banks and tanks are nearing zero, and we can't overflow God's love and just let it swish on out of our broken vessel to love on people if we're bleeding out and we're so depleted that there's nothing left. And I think at the beginning before the pandemic, I would have told you, Jackie, depletion is a sign that we're not really doing our part, to dig into God's word and to pray. And now I have a much more compassionate view of that might be part of it. And also, we're designed to need God. And if we're in a season where we feel so needy, like, God, I need you to get up in the morning. I need you to feel safe to walk in this building, to go to this meeting. I need you in a way I haven't needed you in a long time. I don't know if that's necessarily as bad as I thought it was. And Jackie, I'm sad to admit that a couple of years ago before the pandemic, I would have been like, yeah, I call on God when we need a breakthrough of the Spirit. And now I'm like, I call on God every moment of every day. And this desperate dependence I have on him, I didn't look down on it. I just thought, hopefully I won't need that. And now that I'm experiencing depletion, burnout, weariness, I'm like, oh, wow, there's treasures here for us that I don't want to miss. And I'm not calling it good. I don't like it. I'm not asking for more of it. So don't get me wrong, Jackie. I'm just saying that if we are in a place in our leadership, we're like really desperate, really needing God, that's good. That's okay. In fact, there might be some stuff for us in these in-between places that we couldn't access otherwise. That there may be some places in our heart that have to be broken open to get filled back up. And so the capacity we need to lead, the wells we need to draw from, we don't have to have them in us. And I know that's real basic, and people are listening going, this lady's in leadership. How did she not know these lessons? I knew them theoretically, and now I'm experiencing them in my real life, and they mean more to me. And so I would just encourage the leaders listening, if you feel needy, good, Jesus is going to meet those needs. You feel depleted, we've got someone who can fill your tank. He doesn't run dry. He does not run out. His springs don't ever stop. And so if we need living water, if we need to be patched up, he's the rebuilder. And so I don't want to go off on a million metaphors, but Jackie, you get my point that like, if we need God, it's good to need him.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And it really does force you to have to only get him. You know what I mean? Like, I think there's so many things that coming out of the pandemic where God really kind of sifted out a lot of things in my own heart. And I think as I talk with other leaders to where, crowd size or even affirmation, from people. And when nobody's in the room and when there's no events happening or when there's no face-to-face, in those relationships, I mean, there's so many things that were like shaken up and really kind of boiled to the surface, these things that weren't God. They were maybe done in the name of God, were like kind of byproducts for the ministry and leadership that we get to be a part of. But those things kind of rising to the top and really exposing, like, why are we doing this thing? Like, what are we coming to that isn't God? And so it's painful though, right? And I think it's in many ways disorienting. And so what would you say is kind of your hope for you, for me, for those listening, like as we are coming out of this thing and as we are trying to recalibrate and we are trying to learn again what it means to need God and only God? What is your hope maybe for the next month, year? Like where do you hope to see women leaders coming out of this?
I think we are going to see a tidal wave of freedom, newfound freedom that could only come fighting a battle for our faith, for our mental capacities, for our mental health, for our spiritual well-being, that they are truly battles, because there is someone who does not want us to succeed in enjoying Jesus or to continue on in our faithful roles, right? And so I think that we are going to feel the freedom that comes after a big battle. And I think that tidal wave of freedom for female ministry leaders specifically, it's going to look like, not that we don't care. That's not it. Not a burn it all down, or I don't care what anybody thinks. No, quite the opposite. I care more deeply about what God thinks about this than I ever did before, because now I know maybe how I thought about things incorrectly, how other people's have wounded me with their harsh opinions or polarization and anything in the world right now. Now I really know what I'm about. And I'm not just saying that. I think some women feel that already. They're like, now I know why I'm doing this. Now I know what I am all about. And I think about that boxing movie that Russell Crowe was in. And he says something, if you've seen the movie, he gets in multiple fights. And by the last one, he's like, I know what I'm fighting for this time. I'm fighting for my family. I'm fighting for what really matters to me. And I think women are going to feel that, Jackie. I think they're going to look back and they're going to go, I'm not doing it for full rooms. I'm not doing it for numbers. I'm not doing it to build a platform. I love Jesus. And now I remember why. When he's all that's left, he is amazing. He is reason enough. And so I think we're going to see that.
Yeah, I agree. And what a way to end. And so if you're listening today and maybe you're sitting in that discouragement piece, maybe you're sitting in that, like, I know I need Jesus, but I have no idea how to take the next step. I have no idea how to catch my breath. And so we are praying for you and we're cheering you on. And we're hoping that you would sit with the Lord and let him whisper, and maybe even for some of us, scream some of those truths into your head and into your heart and soul, because he's there and he's working even in the valley, even in the midst of dry bones. And he wants to see and show you just how good and gracious he is, and how much he totally has this thing under wraps. Like he's got it under control. And so sometimes we just need those reminders. We need those seasons to kind of strip away our talents, our gifts, our passions and desires, and then just sit back and say, all right, God, like, show me you, show me and give me you and only you. And then let me be obedient into what is ahead. And so we really are cheering you on. And we also deeply empathize with the heart and the struggle and the day-to-day obedience that is having to be called out of each of us as we move forward and as we heal together. So, Kat, thank you so much for joining us today. Why don't you tell our listeners, how do they find you? So how do they find your books, your new project Storyline? How do they kind of connect with you on socials? Tell us a little bit about you and how to find you.
Yeah, go to katarmstrong.com or go to thestorylineproject.com, either website. And then I'm on Instagram way too much. I should really think about tailoring that back.
Caleb pictures.
I know, he's so cute. If you want to see our new puppy or my son, Caleb, check it out on Instagram. But I'm in my DMs a lot. So if you need book recommendations or need prayer or anything, those are my favorite to get those kind of messages. And then when it comes to the Storyline, they're on pre-order. I mean, they're ready for spring semester for people who are leading small groups or ministry groups. Go check it out. And then same thing for the Polish Network. You know, if you're a working woman listening and going, gosh, I need something to encourage me, check them out too. It's the Polish Network on Instagram.
Love it. Well, Kat, thank you so much for sharing your heart, your story, and even more so your hope. I think we all need that today. So thank you so much for spending some time at the table with me.
Thanks, Jackie. Love you.
Yes, love you too. And as always, thank you, ladies, for joining in. I know that your heart is encouraged. I know that your heart is at least feeling a little bit of that hope and that encouragement today. And so I hope you know, again, we are cheering you on. We are in the trenches with you, and we are watching God in and through you. We'll see you next week for another episode of At the Table.